And I will tell you,
It's craziness.
It will save you so much money in the long run, because even if you have like just a small spot repair, and let's say it's in the front yard, you're still looking at like $1,500.
Welcome back to the CashFlow podcast. I'm your host, Jason Yoss. Today, my special guest, Steve Ochoa. Steve, good to see you.
Good to see you.
Hey, man, super excited to have you on because unlike a lot of the other guests, you actually work with your hands and you support what all of us do. You're the director of ops at Daniel's Plumbing.
Yes, thank you for having me on. And yeah, I do work with my hands.
And I don't mean it in any other way other than, so many of my guests in here help investors and, buy property, whether it's flipping, mortgage notes, Tom and Susie's first home. But the reality is when it comes to actually operating that piece of material, that property, most of us can't survive without a plumber. Okay, most of us can't survive without being able to service our properties, and you're in the thick of it. All right, so as the director of ops, Daniel's Plumbing, you're all over Southern California, correct?
Yeah, so we started off in Long Beach about 30 years ago. My father started the business. He's Daniel, and through a series of different events, I ended up working with him after I was in corporate America for some time, and when Dad wanted to retire, and I told him, look, if you want me to take over the business, I'm happy to do it, because I've been working with him since I was in elementary school.
Growing up on a truck, right?
Literally grew up on a truck. I was under houses, and I was like 9 years old. So I learned how to solder a pipe when I was like 8 or 9 years old.
Right.
So
could you use a welding torch before you could drive? Absolutely.
Absolutely, yeah. So then it was something I wanted to do, but being stuck in the golden handcuffs of corporate America,
Yeah.
When we finally had that opportunity, I told them I'll do it. But my caveat is I want to expand. So we're not going to just stay in Long Beach. We're going to go to San Diego. So San Diego came next. Then we started kind of closing the gap. So we have Orange County, and then we also have Riverside County as well.
And that experience, that blend of, hey, I grew up on a truck, I know how to do the plumbing things, with your background, your college degree, and then that corporate world, able to make plumbing efficient from a investor, property manager, landlord standpoint. Talk to us a little bit about how you blended that background for efficiency.
Yeah, for sure. So one of the biggest things that I always stress is the need, to create systems in place,
Right.
to where you don't have to constantly be, the man who does everything, and getting your hands involved in every single piece of the pie, right? You have to hire the right people, you have to create the right systems in place, and the systems have to work, and they have to have their checks and balances. There's times where like Roy will, reach out and say, hey, we have, this problem here or whatever, or this one's a little bit tricky. And if it's something that needs my attention, is a little bit higher up, it's a bigger estimate, then I kind of get involved. But if it's something kind of more par for the course, I always say, hey, give it back to the office and let them figure it out. That's their job. I want them to, they got to learn how to troubleshoot, right? So,
and there has to be like a background with supply chain management. I mean, the ability to create not just efficiency, but savings for clients. I mean, it's amazing the way you're doing. Talk to us about, I think we were talking before off camera about just water heaters, for example, right? Or buying parts in bulk, how that provides savings to your clients.
Yeah. One of the things that we're able to do, and you've seen our water heater pricing, we can beat a lot of different people. I think the only people who we can't beat is probably Handyman, but they shouldn't be replacing water heaters anyway.
Technically, San Diego requires a lot. Like I think it's pulling permits or whatever like that.
Technically, you got to pull a permit, yeah. But
craziness for a toilet too, so that's craziness.
And we always pull one. But anyway, yeah. Now the way we're able to get our pricing down is, like you mentioned, I have a master's degree in supply chain, and one of the things that we started doing is we got creative with our ordering. So we are able to order by the truckload. So we'll order water heaters by the truckload. We'll order garbage disposals by the pallet. We'll order faucets by the pallet. And for us, that's how we're able to get the pricing as, as slim as possible,
Right.
which then we're able to pass on those savings on for customers. A big part of it too has to do with the fact that we specialize with property management companies.
Right.
We work with homeowners, we work commercial, we specialize property management company, and with doing that, it gives us a little bit more of a predictable nature as to how many of whatever we need to order in a specific quarter or cycle of the year.
More importantly, not just that, but working with the investor, the property management company, the realtor who's doing this all the time versus advertising to the homeowner. You speak our language. You know what we're looking for in terms of communication with a tenant so they know the help is on the way. You don't have to be the cheapest, but we're looking for reliability and quality control when it comes on the landlord side. We tell our landlords, like, hey, you want the cheapest, like, go somewhere else, go to Craigslist, figure that one out. But most importantly is that everything that is done is with the end state in mind of you're taking care of your clients, which is us, the management company, the realtor, and then that goes to our clients, the tenant and the landlord. I love the way you've come up with doing that. Do you think that if you had to go back and do it again, you would still continue to focus on the management side of the house, or as you grow your business, have you looked at other avenues of plumbing?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely like working with commercial, but for us, we like the property management side. Again, not that we don't service homeowners, and we absolutely do, but we like the relationship that we have with the property management companies.
Yeah.
I'm also a real estate investor. As you know, I have my broker's license as well, so I feel like I have a little bit of a unique, I guess, mindset when it comes to plumbing service and repair than
Right.
your typical plumbing company. Because the way I see it is, what would I be doing
Right.
to my rental units?
Yep.
If this was my property, this is how I would fix it. There's a lot of, as the saying goes, there's 1,000 ways to skin a cat, but there's only a handful of ways to do this the best way possible
Right.
for the best ROI for this, for this homeowner or this landlord in the future.
Do you? And before we get into case study, I want to talk about where did that philosophy come from? Is there a mentor that you gleaned a lot of this stuff from? Where does that come from?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it was just my father. He was
Daniel.
Daniel Daniel from Maintenance Plumbing. He was he's an immigrant. Came here. He started his business with pretty much nothing, and his whole premise of his business was just treating people with respect and doing things honestly. And it carries us a long way. When we're able to send an estimate and we know that our estimate is backed by the truth, and it's not just some scammy plumber who's trying to
Stick it to the homeowner.
Yeah, and you see that a lot. I've seen it. Actually, I just dealt with one this last weekend, where a friend of mine, he called me all freaked out. He's selling his house, and the buyers, they had a plumber stick in their camera, and he tried making a mountain out of a molehill. There was nothing wrong. It needed a little bit of descaling, and or a jetter, pick your poison. And they tried saying, oh, it's going to be like a $15,000 fix. We got to excavate it out and replace this and that. And I'm like, no, you don't.
Right.
It's like, absolutely you don't. But it's just like, but you build that reputation sticks.
Yeah.
And if you
Yeah.
get caught trying to sell something that ought not to be sold, you're going to have that reputation for the rest of your life.
100%. I liken it to like a mechanic, an auto mechanic. When you go and find the right one, it's amazing, and you're always going to go back to them. But you get a real bad taste when you get that one that is upselling everything. And unfortunately, in our industry, the big box plumber that you find on Google, they have that reputation. Sometimes not warranted, but a lot of times definitely warranted. Where, as we say, just sticking it to the homeowner. Like every job, it's how can I upsell more stuff, or and it's refreshing to be able to work with a company where that's not what we deal with. So let's shift gears and talk about some case study stuff. Okay, biggest thing, real estate investor, landlord, biggest thing you want them to know, or you wish you would know when they get into a project.
Yeah, I mean, like we talked about this, the number one thing that I always recommend, and it's the number one thing that's ignored, and it's not and it's not part of the standard inspection. Everybody thinks it is. It's not. is sticking a camera into your sewer line.
So when you're purchasing or investing in a property, scope the fucking lines.
100%. I can't tell you how many properties that we've worked on. I don't know why, but Mission Bay just happens to be the fucking heartland of this. Right. But you'll see these properties where they raised the property to to the dirt, and then they threw in a 3-story just monstrosity there. Great, good for you if you got the money to do it.
Yeah.
But then the problem comes is when they get the tenants in there, and 2 months later they call us out and say, "Oh, the sewer line's clogged. Blah blah. We'll stick our snake in there. Can't get it through. Stick our camera." The sewer line's old cast iron right next to the beach, and it's just shot. I mean, it is crumbling. And now they have to redo their entire property. But it's not just that; it's single family homes. We've seen it where somebody buys a house in UTC, they flipped it, not to sell it, but they flipped it to to remodel it, to rent it. And sure enough, the whole sewer line had to come out, and it ended up being, I think that one was like a $20,000 job, but it's because it's all saw cutting. Right. Saw cutting through the concrete and pulling out the old sewer line and putting a new one in.
And of course, they probably put a new floor.
Oh, they had
new
done
cabinets and everything.
Everything. The cabinets had to go. Oh yeah,
And I think we talked about this too before. Just as a caveat to this is, look, like when you get a leak, especially in the plumbing, like insurance doesn't cover everything. That's one of the biggest things we hear is like, "What can I call my insurance company?" Like for some things.
Yeah. So the technical term is failure to maintain. That's the insurance jargon. They will cover the damages that were caused most of the time. Talk to an insurance adjuster.
Talk to your adjuster, yeah, right.
Yeah, or talk to somebody who can actually read your plan, because there are insurance plans that have a carve out for water damage. They just do not cover water damage of any kind. But one of the things you should do is check the plumbing, because if it's it's not good and you have a water ceiling leak, generally speaking they'll cover the damages that it caused.
Sure.
But they will not cover the cost of the repair for the plumbing.
Yeah.
And if it's just something small, then I mean whatever, it's not a big deal. But if it's something like you need a repipe,
oh my gosh,
that's yours. You're paying for that.
Especially, I want to talk about my boutique apartments. Like, how often do we see, like you use the example, Mission Bay, but just the apartments are older than, what, 1990 at least,
Oh,
1980,
yeah.
And the plumbing is an issue. And if they've just done a whole remodel, okay, well, now you got to go right up through those floors. You got to rip out plumbing and start over. It's if they just took the time to do that scope in the beginning, at least they'd be able to say, like, look, we're going to do this remodel. Let's do the plumbing work first with less worry about what we're damaging, because we're going to remodel over it when we're done.
Yeah, and the last thing you want to do is pay for a remodel,
after you just did it again.
After you just did it again, yeah. And it's water damage is the number one cause for property damage.
Absolutely,
it is.
Absolutely. All right. So when we talk about, looking at pipes, is it the same as like when people say like slab leak, or is it also, is it just crumbling old pipes? Like when you talk about scoping line, like what exactly am I looking for?
Yeah. So for the scoping of the line, that's specifically for your drain lines and for your sewer lines. Okay. So a couple things you want to look for. I mean, no sewer line looks good from the inside. That's just, and that's kind of why some plumbers are able to, scam people, because you'll stick it in there and we're like, look how bad your pipe.
Look at this.
Yeah. And it's like, that's a normal pipe. But yeah, what you want to do is you want to look for dislocations. So like if your pipes, that's a dislocation.
Yeah.
When you have a full on, you can see the inside of like the other section of the pipe.
Got it.
That's where you got like a dislocation. Sometimes you have something called a belly, basically, your line has to have a slope.
Mm-hmm.
And then for whatever reason, a root will get in here and it'll create.
Oh, really?
Pump, right. So now you have water getting stuck here.
Uh-huh.
And it'll cause backups like crazy.
Sure.
And there's nothing you can do about it other than actually fixing
Fix that area.
Yeah, and you'll see sometimes, we've had some other people say like, "Oh, can't you just sleeve it?" And it's like, you're gonna sleeve a belly. You put a sleeve over a belly, you still have a belly, and that's your problem.
What is this? What does a basic inspection scoping cost?
$250.
Wait, you're telling me
$250.
You're telling me that people won't scope, or they choose not to scope their lines when investing or purchasing a property over $250?
Yeah, and I will tell you,
That's craziness.
it will save you so much money in the long run because even if you have like just a small spot repair,
Right.
and let's say it's in the front yard, you're still looking at like $1,500,
Right.
you know, and if it's inside your slab, you're looking at 2,500 plus whatever flooring you had there.
Right.
If you had nice flooring, it's going to be a lot more than that. But yeah, it's a very small cost or price to potentially prevent a gigantic issue down the
Right.
road.
And if you're purchasing, right, you I'm assuming can negotiate as a part of your purchase, like, hey, this is what I found, this is what kind of credit I'd like, or at least you can make a decision: do I or do I not want to continue with the purchase?
Yeah, and that's exactly it. And a lot of realtors are getting smart about this because they
Right.
understand once you find it, now it becomes a disclosable item.
That's right.
So
That's
now
right.
it's so
Good
it's
point.
so it's a negotiation tactic, but people also use it in a in a potentially deceitful way, or you have a plumber who just wants to make a mountain out of a molehill, even if it's not the buyers, it's just that plumber that they happen to find.
Got it. Good point.
Again, like my buddy, he just called me up because he was freaking out because his sale's probably going to fall through. Well, they were trying to get a credit for like 15 grand or 12 grand, whatever it was. I charge him 250. We stick in our camera and we're like, all it needs is a jetter, $600.
Yeah.
So I waived the camera fee because he gave me the jetter job. So he's
Sure.
paying $600 instead of giving a $15,000 credit.
Right.
So it works both ways. You can use it defensively and you can use it proactively, to make sure you're not buying a problem.
What a great way to do risk mitigation. Let's go on to the second item that you brought up that I was a little bit surprised, but such a major item: asbestos.
Yes.
Walk me through like what that means when it comes to plumbing issues.
Yeah. So it's pretty obvious, all plumbing is behind a wall or under concrete or in a
Right.
ceiling. It's behind some type of finishing material.
Mhm.
So when we go across like an older building, and we've had some pushback from some property managers just because they're not aware of the procedures. So we go to like a duplex or a fourplex, and we see that it was built in 1950s, which is super normal here. You see 60s, 50s,
Sure.
20s, 30s
Yeah.
here in San Diego all the time. And we come across property like that, and we know we got to open up a wall to do a repair. We always tell everybody, hey, you got to get this tested. There are some ways around the testing in the event of an emergency,
Mhm.
but even those, you have to do it under like PP, wear the proper PPE.
Right.
Everything has to be done in a negative air containment.
Sealed
So
environment,
you got to
right.
do it. You got to do it the right way. And most plumbers are not equipped to be able to do it the right way.
Right.
But one of the biggest things that some property managers and a lot of owners are not aware of is back in the day, if a plumber came in, put a hammer to a wall so they can make the repair, they weren't the owners and the property managers weren't liable
Right.
for potential contamination.
Sure. Just the
asbestos.
plumber, right? The plumber.
Just the plumber.
The plumber swung the hammer. He's responsible. What would we know? I don't know anything about that.
Correct. That rule's changed. So now the property manager and the property owner are both required to hire competent people who are going to perform the work the way that it's supposed to be performed. So they hire you, and then you are supposed to hire contractors, and the contractors are supposed to do it the right way. And if anybody screws up in that chain, you're all liable.
All responsible.
And, like I mentioned to you, one of my favorite sayings is, lessons not learned in blood are soon forgotten.
Yeah.
The reason I'm pretty familiar with this whole process is because we've been caught in on it.
Talk to me about that story. Talk to me about the LA story.
Yeah, so this is a story in LA. Can't get too far into the details because it was a settlement. But long story short, it was a case where there was an HOA, a property manager, a property owner, a tenant, and ourselves. And we went in to do the work. We did everything the way you're supposed to. Did it under negative air pressure, contained, did the repair. Well, turns out that wall happened to test positive for mold.
Okay.
And it also tested positive for asbestos. So everybody who was involved in that, all those parties I named, minus the tenant, because the tenant brought forth the lawsuit.
Sure.
ended up sued the HOA,
Shoot
property
everybody.
owner,
Yeah.
the owner, and us. We were, it ended up being a settlement, and we were very minimally liable because we did everything by the books on our end. The only thing we didn't do is the testing. Because people say, oh, you can open up at 100 square feet without testing.
Sure.
It's partially true. You can do that, but you cannot throw away what you opened.
You still
So
got
whatever,
hazmat, all that stuff.
yeah. So you still have to double seal it, leave it on the premise, do the work, but you still have this bag that you got to leave in the corner. And then you got to go back, get it tested. If it came back negative, great, throw it in the
Throw it
trash.
away.
If it came back positive, well, now you got to get a hazardous waste material company to come and get it. So it doesn't really like alleviate you of all the responsibilities.
Sure.
It just kind of slightly delays it so you can get the work done.
Right.
But for us, it's one of those things that we're overly cautious because we know that unfortunately California is the most litigious state
Absolutely.
possible. I mean, if anything, New York probably gives it a run for its money, but they're
It's becoming more and more. I mean, this is like 21st year in business. Over the last 5 to 7 years, I've heard this more and more and more. The laws, San Diego County and city ordinance have gotten more strict about this as well. Talk to me about best practices then when you have a leak, how to go about it.
a couple different things is, if it's a larger property, know where your shutoffs are at.
Right.
What I've seen a couple customers of mine do, if like they have like this old 10 unit complex and there's only one shutoff valve for the whole thing, they'll retrofit it and add
Sure.
like a shutoff for each stack.
Okay.
That way they're only shutting off 2 units
2 or 3 units,
versus,
yeah, versus the whole thing, yeah.
Yeah, so that's one of the things because the rule is, until it gets tested, you can't really do a whole lot.
Yeah, you're not supposed to be cutting until you
Yeah,
test it. Yeah.
and we've called the authorities, the property, is it or AQMD and APCD, I think it is.
The AQMD for San Diego, right?
Yeah,
Got it.
so we've called them. I always jumble up the acronyms, but yeah, they basically say like, yeah, no, if you can't get it tested in time, then shut off the water.
Yeah.
So now as a property,
That's the
owner,
answer. Shut off the water.
shut off the water.
Yeah.
And we've seen them do it. There is a property in Oceanside. Oh, actually, it was one of your properties.
Ah, there we go.
Where they, when there was an issue with like a sewer line.
Right in the middle.
Yep,
Yeah.
and
I remember that.
Yep, and they pulled the meter.
Yeah.
They don't mess around.
They pulled the meter. No one, including thanks neighbor for doing all that work to start that off. And well, that's another story, and I love that one. But go one more down on this. Okay, so you do all that, getting tested. Is that something that's a major action, or is that something very simple? Like if you get the piece of material, where do you go to get it tested? How long does it take? What does that look like?
So yeah, there's a bunch of testing companies out there,
Mm-hmm.
and typically they can get an answer within 24 hours unless it's over a weekend. Some of them you can get them same day. It just kind of depends on how busy they are, but it's a pretty easy process. They'll coordinate with the tenant, and they have to test multiple areas.
Right.
So like if you say I need to open up this little square, they'll test in that square and then around it,
Right.
in a different room or whatever.
Because of different drywall. Is that the whole thought
Yeah,
process
there's
why-
different. Well, the other thing is too, sometimes you can find asbestos in the drywall sheets,
Right.
and then sometimes it's in the drywall compound.
Got it.
So like where they tape it and they joining 2 sheets of drywall, you'll find it in there too.
So does it make sense if I own a multifamily, like let's say boutique apartment, 4-plex, 8-plex, 12-plex, does it make sense to have the building tested so that way, hey, anytime I have any kind of plumbing leak, I already know, hey, I'm going to have to use PPE and get it properly handled. Is that make sense or is that overkill?
I mean, it does make sense. When you have like a big emergency happen, it's great for you to already have it for your records. I know there's certain rules where they say technically, you got to test it before you open because you don't know what work's been done in the meantime. But at the very least, you have some kind of backing, and you can actually say like, well, hey, I have a history. I've tested this thing. I know it's
Right.
clear, right? Because asbestos is one of those things that's, where there's smoke, there's fire. If you got a
Sure.
little bit of asbestos in that
Yeah.
unit, I guarantee you the rest of the unit has asbestos somewhere.
And close me out with in terms of like what are the caveats? Is it like homes built before 90? Is it single family as well as multifamily? Like without all the little exceptions, like what is the general rule of what properties you have to test and which ones you cannot or you don't normally have to test?
Yeah. So in San Diego, and this rule changes in the different counties that you're in, but in San Diego, if it's 5 or more units, you have to test it regardless of when it was built. It could have been built yesterday, and you got to test it technically. And if it's 1 through 4 units, it's advised that you test it if it was built before 1987.
Got it.
Yeah.
With all that in mind, one last question before we wrap up. What's the biggest challenge running a large plumbing company? What's the biggest challenge you're facing with your real estate partners?
You know,
And we're not throwing anybody under the bus, of course. We're just talking about like, hey, these are things that we have to work through on a regular basis with our partners.
yeah, I mean, I think the biggest issue is just, there's a couple. One of the logistical issues is tenants never answer their phones. So we get
Fair enough.
we'll get this work order and say, hey, we got, we have to, do this snaking of a line or whatever. And the tenants called it in, and we'll call them, we'll text them, we'll leave voicemails, and they just never answer. And then we'll get a call like, where are the plumbers at? Like, it's just like, you don't answer your phone.
Right,
like,
right.
what do you want me to do?
You would think putting in a work order for emergency repair, you would want to answer your phone, but apparently not.
Yeah, I would say that. And then, the other thing is going back to insurance costs, because California is so litigious. Insurances in California are insane.
It's like getting higher too, right?
Plumbing vehicles are so expensive to insure.
Yeah.
Because they get broken into and stuff like that. And it's just, when we give our pricing, even though our pricing is always really good, every now and then you're still going to get somebody who's like, well, why is it so expensive to do this? And it's like, because I'm licensed, bonded, and insured.
Yeah.
I can't beat handyman pricing. I'm sorry.
Which is a good thing. Wrap us up with this one. Lasting piece of advice for a young entrepreneur, tradesman, lasting piece of advice for them, pairing with partners like management company and realtors.
Yeah, the biggest thing is be honest. Be honest and don't try to sell something that's not needed.
Yeah.
If you don't know an answer to something, don't make it up, because nothing will ruin a relationship more than just BSing somebody and, just making up answers on the spot. Because they're going to sniff that out and you're going to get caught and you're going to lose that relationship entirely. So honesty goes a really long way when it comes to, creating relationships.
Relationship is everything. Steve Ochoa, Daniels Plumbing, thank you so much for coming, sitting down, and for taking care of our properties. I know we're just one of several management companies and real estate investors that you work with, and we're proud to be a partner. So appreciate your time here. Everyone else, thanks for tuning in to the CashFlow podcast, where we talk about turning properties into profits. Look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you. Take care.